Okay, we're good to go.
Excellent. As people come in, please remember that we are recording these sessions, so if you do not want to be recorded, be mindful of muting and closing your video. And as I've cracked a joke every other day that I've hosted, you don't want your mama to hear it. Make sure you don't say it. We're going to take a few minutes to give people a chance to come in, and we'll get started shortly. All right, let's get started to make the most of the time, make the most of the time we have together today. Welcome to the fifth and final day of our 14th annual NOLA ILC Information Literacy Forum and our fifth online conference. We're so glad everyone could make it, and we have enjoyed all the presentations this week. My name is Dr. Megan Lowe. I am the Director of University Libraries at Northwestern State University, and I am a member of the NOLA ILC Executive Board. Our chat monitor today is actually the chair of the Executive Board, Ariana Lonan, and she's down at Loyola. I'm going to take a moment to read our land acknowledgement and action statement. The New Orleans Information Literacy Forum would not only like to acknowledge the original inhabitants of our land, but also provide suggestions and links for others to show support of Native communities and causes. Our policy can be found on our website as part of the link tree that Ariana has just dropped into the chat. Before we get to today's presenters, there are a couple of housekeeping matters we need to take care of. We'll have 2 lightning talks and 1 presentation. You can type your questions into the chat box at any time, and our chat moderator will keep track of them for the Q&A session afterwards. You can also use the chat box to let us know about any tech problems that you think may be originating on our end. Finally, in the chat box, we've dropped a URL to our link tree, which also includes links to our social media channels and the aforementioned land acknowledgement and action statement. One final note, we'll be recording this presentation and sharing it on our YouTube channel soon. Today, we're honored to welcome Caitlin Cooper and Courtney Stortz from Delgado for our first lightning talk, Scanning the Possibilities, Making Library Instruction Even Better with QR Codes. Let us begin. Take it away, friends.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Scanning the Possibilities, Making Library Instruction Even Better with QR Codes. I am Caitlin Cooper, and with me is my colleague, Courtney Stortz. As Megan's introduction was so kind to say, we are librarians at Delgado Community College here in New Orleans, and we're excited to share our experiences with QR codes with you. And we're here to discuss our journey with implementing QR codes in library instruction. And we'll cover the pros, the cons, and what was learned so far about QR codes and using them in our experience. And to begin with, our library introduced formative assessments in our one-shot instruction modules in 2014. And in 2020, with the shift to Zoom and the challenges brought by COVID-19, we adapted our evaluation methods by incorporating online formats and QR codes. And our system and librarian, Shanna, was very kind to recreate all of the formative evaluations in live forms in an online format. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Courtney, who will give you more about the background.
Caitlin, the next slide.
Alrighty, Court.
So one of the key reasons for exploring new evaluation methods was a significant change in our physical setup. In 2023, our library no longer had dedicated instruction classrooms. This means that librarians now have to travel to various classrooms to conduct instruction. Traditional online forms weren't always feasible because not all classrooms have computers, and transporting print forms across campus became cumbersome. To address these challenges, we researched technologies like Microsoft Forms and Live Forms to collect data more efficiently. Our system administrator, Shanna Clevenger, played a crucial role by updating the Formative Evaluation Live Guide and creating a dedicated QR code page. So now I'm going to show you our Live Guide. So the first one that we have is the 321. And these are the assessments that we made in live forms. And then we also did an exit ticket. They look pretty much about the same. These were created for our online classes. Moving forward, Caitlin created QR codes, which linked to the live forms, and Shanna added those to the web page. And these are all of our QR codes that are linked to our live forms. So our pilot project in fall of 2024, we started with an instructor survey, emailing it to 8 instructors. We received 4 responses, and the feedback was positive, yielding one useful suggestion. One instructor said, allow time for students to log in and use online features, as well as search for articles during class. In the future, we considered emailing the instructor immediately after class, as it might improve response rate. We also conducted a student survey, which was emailed to instructors, then forwarded through email and Canvas. We only received 11 responses out of the 16 classes that we taught that semester. We considered it a win because we sent it out at the end during finals, which we agreed was a bad idea. But the feedback was positive, and they had no specific suggestions for change. Student comments were, I learned how to use the Delgado database. This information will be beneficial for research, for my research papers. And then another student said, I wouldn't change anything about today's lesson. So for future surveys, we're considering bringing a physical QR code sign to the class and dedicating a slide for online classes, as some students had trouble with QR codes that were forwarded in emails. And then, of course, sending out the survey before the end of the semester. The main issue that we had with live guides is that not all librarians have admin access, which made retrieving the data difficult. And then also the results had to be counted manually. So now Caitlin's going to talk about the implementation of the QR codes with Microsoft Forms, which we moved to.
All right. So in spring 2025, I had created this little general user survey just as an experiment, and we put them at the circulation desk with QR codes that I had made. I made the survey and the QR code using Microsoft Forms to gauge student knowledge about the library. This short survey with 6 questions and a comment section took about 2 minutes on average for respondees to complete. Despite initial social media promotion, response rates were low until we actively promoted the form to individual students at the circulation desk. And this really was helpful, and the direct interaction led to 41 responses. We particularly targeted students that were using one of our general study rooms. And so this led to 41 responses, with 17 of those including positive comments in the comment section about helpful librarians, a great environment, and pleasant staff. And this Microsoft Forms has been instrumental and very useful because it allows us to generate pie charts, QR codes, and Excel spreadsheets from our survey data. And I created flyers for each of the QR codes using Canva. As an example, I'm going to show you a flyer I made for the general user survey. And this is what we have up at the circulation desk. These nice little Delgado green colors and QR code flyer. All right. And so here's a summary of what we've done since we began experimenting with the QR codes in 2025. And this was all inspired by a webinar on Microsoft Forms and QR codes that a couple of us had attended. And so I created these evaluations, like I said, in Microsoft Forms for an English 110 class and a nursing class. And so the QR codes, they link to the online versions of these formative assessments and in live forms as well that I did. And for the ones in live forms that Shanna had created, I made QR codes for those using Adobe Express, a free online QR code generator. I probably don't need to tell you guys about it, but probably know, but here it is. Simple enough to do. And so I did that, and I also had recreated an instructor evaluation form and in Microsoft Forms and made a QR code for it using Microsoft Forms for instructors who had previously requested our library instruction or shown interest in our Delgado Library instructional seminars, which were implemented in 2022. And these are just little instructional one-shots that we do throughout the semester that aren't associated with a class. All right, so we're going to look at some of the feedback that we did receive. And as Courtney had mentioned earlier, most of this was positive. So from instructors, they found the information thorough and easy for students to understand. Students successfully completed research assignments involving journal articles. And that's one of the main things we always try to do is show them how to locate journal articles. Key suggestion was to allow ample time for students to log in, use online features, and search for articles during class. And I thought that was pretty useful if you have time for it. As you guys know, one shots can be a bit short on time, right? And so from students reported gaining a stronger understanding of how to use the website and provided databases. Many learned how to access magazine articles, which they previously struggled with. Students also learned about using and, or, and not to refine database search results, which is, another important skill. And overall, the evaluations indicated that students retained critical information and improved their understanding of library resources. But regarding QR code usage specifically, the findings were mixed. In 2024, 3 surveys using QR codes yielded 10 responses, while QR codes had a 50% response rate when used in face-to-face classes. That's not so much a QR code issue as it is an in-person class versus an online class thing. And that's another struggle that I'm sure many of you deal with as well, that we deal with, is getting interaction and responsiveness in online settings in particular. I mean, you don't always in a physical class either. That's why I appreciated that presentation the other day. So that outperformed, but the QR codes, so the QR codes did outperform putting a chat link, a link in the Zoom chat for the online sessions, but they definitely had lower response rates than traditional paper forms and face-to-face sessions. And as I said, I think that's more of a online class versus in-person class problem than it is a problem with QR codes. And the thing about QR codes is that they do have pros and cons, and I am going to let Courtney tell you about those.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the benefits and the challenges. Um, the benefits, they're visually appealing. They save instruction time. Displaying a QR code is quicker than distributing and collecting paper forms. The content can be easily modified, and the responses are automatically compiled, which streamlines the data collection process. Some of the challenges is not all students may have smartphones or tablets. There could be limited knowledge, especially with non-traditional students, which we did have in a criminal justice class. And there's also a possibility that they may have limited data. QR codes can be vulnerable and to fraud and to hacking, and the response rate is generally lower. For us, we noticed that students will snap the QR code, walk away, and not even submit their answers, even when their instructor specifically asks them to. Next slide. So our experience with formative evaluations through various instruction modes and classes has yielded mixed results. While they provide valuable insight into how students perceive and use the library and offer suggestions for improving instruction or identifying areas where students want more information, response rates will always be a challenge no matter what method we choose. Thank you for your time and attention. Please let us know if you have any questions or comments.
Thank you, Caitlin and Courtney, for all that helpful information. That was really cool. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, but I'm going to give folks a minute to process. And if anybody has any questions, just pop them in the chat.
Thank you, Megan.
Thanks, Megan.
No problem. Oh, we've got a good comment here. Brandy says she likes using QR codes too. That's why I was excited about this. I'm on a QR happy campus, and I'm like, maybe I should get on board.
Yeah, we can collaborate.
Absolutely.
I know how to find you. I'm not seeing any questions, so we will move on to the next one. Another Delgado offering. We have Shanna Clevenger. She's going to do a lightning talk on how to make a how-to. I like that inception there, Shanna. Bring it on.
Okay. I don't know. Yep, that's me. Hey y'all. Um, so let's start. Okay, so how to make a how-to. So I know that that's one of the banes of my existence. I have to create a tutorial, or I have to edit a tutorial, or my voiceover didn't work, or how do I even start with one? So I'm hoping that when I show you this new and amazing thing that I think I'm the only one that found, and I think everyone should get it, I'll show you how to use it and the benefits and all of that. So I'm going to show you how I used to do it, and now how I do it, and how I went through the progression of getting to where I am now. So my current how-tos, I am the system administrator, so I do a lot of the back end things. So I have tutorials, and the reason why I do tutorials is so like if I'm ever gone, if Courtney ever has to load in our patron file, she can use my manual or digital manual, and she can follow step by step on how to load the patrons if I'm not there. So let me show you how I did that. So on how to load the patrons, what I would do is I would go in, and everything I would do, I would screenshot and then go add it to a Word document. So anything, a screenshot, add it to Word, screenshot, add it to Word. Then when I got all the screenshots done, then I would go back through and I would type up all of the wording on what you need to do. Log on here, use your credentials, click on this button. This is what it should look like. So it was a lot of manual aggravation. And a lot of times, sometimes if I knew what I was doing. It was just automatic. And so sometimes, you know, you might miss a step and someone who's never done it, it just gets all hairy. So this is my how my wonderful tutorials. You had it in arrows and little boxes, show things where things go. And of course, Word is only so big, so you can't really zoom in. So if I really wanted to see what this picture was, I'd have to zoom in on a Word document. And so you try to make it look the best you can. But this is the old version. And a lot of times you have to like edit individual pictures and then just just crop out certain things to put on your documents. So this is what I used to use. Okay. And let's go back here. So a Word document isn't really useful for databases tutorials. So I had to figure out some way for us to create like how to use a database, how do you find our website, how do you log in. So there are some programs that I have used. I started out with my little screenshots. I use snipping tools. The snippy tool does now have the feature for you to video. I've used Windows Gaming, and Camtasia is amazing, powerful software product that we did finally get. So I'm going to show you a tutorial that I've used on Camtasia. Sorry for the ads. So on this tutorial, I'm just going to show you just a brief snippet of the stuff that I did with Camtasia. So in Camtasia, what was really cool was I was able to like zoom in on the area that I wanted, and then I was able to put in these little boxes and then time it in the video to show up when I wanted it to. But again, it did take me a little bit longer for me to figure out how to do that. So it is an amazing product, but it does take some tutorials and some knowledge for you to learn how to do. So let's go back. So the issues that I've had with my old way, having to start and stop while you're making your tutorials, having to, if I'm in the middle of doing screen capture with audio, people will come into my office or a phone will ring, then you have to stop. And there are some programs that actually let you edit the voice, so you have to keep backtracking and then re-recording, and it kind of sounds all weird if you start a recording one day and you edit it another day and have to re-edit. So it gets a little wonky, and some of the programs can be a little complicated. So as you know, when you take breaks during work, we kind of scroll through social media. Well, one of those ads that popped up was for this amazing program. They always have these really quippy little fun ads that say, oh, if you need to do this, try our software. So I was like, all right, let's try it. So I actually went there, and with the free version, you can do up to 10 tutorials. And let's go back to here. Let's see if it'll let me go. So with the free version, you can do up to 10 guides. It works with any of the web apps. So if you want to capture anything on the internet, the free version is wonderful. But since I do system admin stuff, I have other programs. So I have to use like WinZip, I have to use Xfer, Cersei. I wasn't able to create any how-tos outside of the internet. So if you want to do that, you have to skip over and you have to purchase the software. So that's in the Personal Pro. And the fee right there, the $23 a month, is if you pay for the full year at a time. I only do it month to month, and so that's $29 a month. But it's so amazing that I'm actually on my own. I pay for it myself because I love it that much. So I'm going to show you the ones that I've created. And there's different types that it creates. So for this one, they have the click-through version. So how to add in the library's hours, just step by step. You just click through. So I want to show you the product, then I'll show you how to do it. So these are our click-through tutorials. Then we have, this is just a scroll down tutorial. And if you notice, it has like these little red little circles. And it has all of this nice, wonderful little text. All right, I'm going to show you this other one. So I think it's only available for pay, but I love it. Let me see if I can do a little bit less. So it now has the way to automate it. So you click on it, and then what it does is it takes all of your wording and puts it at the bottom, and then it talks your wording through as it's giving like a real-time demo. And I didn't have to do that, which is amazing. So just let it go a little bit more. And for this one, what's nice is you can then go in and you can, after you've captured everything, it edits it, or you can edit. So I actually edited in this picture. Click call number /item tab. Okay. So that is the 3 different types. Now I'm going to show you actually how to create one. Let's go back to how. That's this one. And let me go to and I'm just going to start it from here. So when you go into Scribe, see, and I can't see because of the Zoom toolbar. So I'm just going to click on New, and I'm going to do Capture a Scribe. And then it does it now where you can do voice transcription while you're doing it, or so then you pick your tab. I'm going to go to Sarsi Symphony, this tab, and then it's capturing my browser. And so then I'm going to log in, and it shows you over to the right what's happening. So make it bigger. And then like if you wanted to do how to check in something, you would just type in your barcode. But as I'm doing it, every little thing that I'm doing on the screen, it is capturing it over there. And then once I'm done, you would click on Complete Capture. And then it brings you into the edit mode where you can go in and you can change things around. So if I wanted to, instead of saying navigate, I wanted to just click in Go To. And then when you click on Login, if I wanted to change this picture, I could. So it basically, as I was doing it, it's typing it out here what you want. But instead of saying click this text field, then you could do click search by. So it's just a little bit. You can type in this information. They also have the feature where you can edit this image if you need to. So if I wanted to right here, I can click here and redact forever. I can crop it, I can annotate it, and you can do all of this in the system and then click on done. So I'm going to say this is like the perfect, best tutorial ever in the whole wide world. And I'm going to click on done editing. Now that this is done, over here, if I want to click on share, you can share a link to it. you can actually get this embed code, and you can do, it's your slides, the scroll one. So this is the click through the slide one. If you want to scroll through it, this is the up and down mode. Or for you to create a movie, and then you would just, once you do that, you would click on your embed code, and then you could embed it into your live guides. They also have the export button. So if you wanted a PDF or you wanted to do HTML, you could do it that way as well. And yeah, and I don't think I did. And that is all of the coolness that I have to show you. So I'm going to stop share. And hopefully y'all like it. And if y'all want some help, I'm down to help. It's revolutionized how I'm always going to do tutorials from now on.
Thank you. That was awesome. I'm sitting over here like,
It's
this is great.
amazing. It makes my life so much easier.
And I like that you can do it within other platforms.
Yes, but you have to pay for it though.
Right, but that option, like that option is there, and that's
Yes. But it's even if you wanted, if an institution like a library director really liked it, it does have a bigger version for like a whole, and like I'm not that. So I mean, I'm pretty sure there's probably a lot more can be done where you can share things and add it. I know there's a way you can add it to like Slack, and there's just more for the business side than just a personal use.
although in my brain, I'm just considering like how that could be such a powerful tool for OER.
Yes. I want to eventually, now that we're moving, I was hoping, I mean, yeah, all of the $29.99 a month that I have to redo that now for all of my tutorials for the new system. But yeah, I think it's going to be very useful.
Awesome.
It can be useful for everything.
Oh yeah. I'm not seeing any questions. Here is my prompt. I mean, I have a feeling that Shanna and I could just sit here and have this conversation for hours, but let's not do that. Any questions? I see that Brandy says she's played around with the free version and has made 3 tutorials, so it sounds like an excellent idea. And for our colleagues not in the academic arena, the Lewis Consortium is switching LSPs, and so the next year is going to be a real fun ride for some of us, especially sysadmins.
Yeah, if I look a little hairy, just step back.
All right, just comments, no questions, so we will move on. Next, we have Tara Deering with her presentation, Adaptability and Inclusion in Programming and Public Service. Tara, please take it away.
Hello, thank you for having me today. Let's see if I can share my screen today. All right, is it showing the correct one? There we go, yes. Okay, so I will apologize ahead of time. This is a 3-hour interactive presentation that I am peeling down to a 1-hour virtual one. So there might be some slides we go by pretty quickly, but all the info's there. And I sent Ariana some handouts as well. So y'all are welcome to access that once Ariana can get that up and available for you. So like they said, my name is Tara, and I am with the East Baton Rouge Parish Library System. I have been here since 2006, and I've been the Children's Services Coordinator since August of 2019. I started studying public service in regards to accessibility and inclusion many, many years ago because it was a personal passion of mine, but I actually implemented our sensory sensitivity initiative in 2021. And of course, as always, we are still adding and updating as we learn more, because there's always more to learn. And so today we want to make sure that we try to share ways for you and your staff to adapt your approach to programming, how you interact with all of your patrons, and how can you include more of your neurodiverse demographic into your environment and your programming. We want to make sure that your staff can be successful in this, and that they have an interest, an actual buy-in to this implementation plan. So that way you do have a successful crossover to change these approaches. And then, of course, I want to give you some tips and tools to improve overall customer service when you're helping these individuals. So first off, what is adaptability? As you can see, National Library of Medicine defines it as the ability to adjust one's thoughts, behaviors, and emotional responses to effectively handle new, uncertain, or changing situations. And obviously, that's something that can apply to anyone in the public. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone who's neurodiverse versus neurotypical. Everybody has bad days, just like that second line there. And so individuals that that have these adaptability issues may not be able to articulate or even communicate in any other way, whether it be verbal or physical, what it is that they need. So it is a little bit of a challenge sometimes to help these individuals. But as public servants, we want to make sure that we adjust the way that we approach public service so that we can easily help them to adapt to our surroundings. There is a give and take in the process. So let's talk a little bit more about that with inclusion. So inclusion is the process of ensuring that diverse individuals with varying identities, backgrounds, and needs are able to fully participate and belong within an organization or system. So we want to make sure everyone feels welcome. We want to make sure that patrons that visit our public spaces actually want to be included. It doesn't matter if they have a sensitivity or a diagnosis or anything else. If they're here and you see them, that means they want to be in the public space. So there's not really a need to identify any of those things. There was a recent study conducted by the University of Washington, at the Information School at the University of Washington. They used 50 families from Washington libraries, over 50 families, and over 70 families nationwide. And they found that 99% of families prefer to participate in inclusive activities as opposed to ones that are specialized for their specific diagnosis or sensitivity. So it's proven that they're coming into public spaces to use our public spaces as anyone else would. Sensory sensitivity is a genetically based trait associated with a greater sensitivity or responsivity, that's a very hard word, to environmental and social stimuli. So it can be related to anything, whether it be a diagnosis or a disorder or any kind of condition. And it may not always be from a diagnosis of any kind. Most people do have some sort of sensitivity, regardless of neurotypical or neurodiverse, so it may not be something that interrupts their daily life, might be something that doesn't require a diagnosis of any kind. So let's see how we originally approached it in our system. So years ago, before I was in my current position, we had a couple of different things that we tried. We tried a sensory story time. It was very formulaic. It was very rigid. It was exclusively for people with diagnoses, which, as we all know, is not good because you're not supposed to ask anyone. It's against HIPAA. And so there were some very hard feelings with the staff. There was no buy-in. No one was interested in it. And we didn't have any interest from the public either. We tried Sensory Fridays. So once a month, we would dim the lights, turn off all extra sound, provide different things for them that would make their experience easier. And we still had no takers. We only did this at one of our branches. And at the time, we had 14 branches. So again, not very successful. And then right after I took over, we started trying to implement sensory mini books, and then COVID hit. And so it wasn't exactly the best time to present something new. So we'll talk a little bit more about those as we go through. What we learned during those processes of those unsuccessful things is that now, being that I'm in the children's department, I do speak a lot towards kids, but everything I'm sharing with you today can actually apply to anyone with a neurodiverse situation or a sensitivity situation. So people are people first. Kids are kids first. Whether they have special needs, neurodiversity, whatever their current being is, they're kids first. And so we should treat them as such. So all patrons come in to be treated like anyone else. They don't want to be singled out. They don't want to be identified. They don't want to be isolated. And when you identify them or stereotype them, that gives them a feeling of isolation. So they wouldn't be here if they didn't want to be. So they're just simply patrons, no specifiers. Then the next thing that we learned was what meets one patron's needs obviously may not be what meets another patron's needs, and in some cases can be the complete opposite of what that patron needs. We all know that all of our patrons have various ways that they want to be approached or interact with. Well, the same goes for patrons with sensitivities. So they're all unique individuals, and there's no 100% way to account for any one need or sensitivity. So you have to sort of do a generic offering as best as you can and change the way that we approach the situation rather than having our patrons change for us. So the first thing, the next thing is that we can also offer options for programming for the way that we approach our service in a non-judgmental space. And we will talk a lot more about that in just a few moments. And then the other thing that we learned was that our job is to encourage the patrons to become lifelong readers. And we all know that. That's what we got into libraries for. And whether that be academic or public or specialized, we want to help our patrons find what they want to read. That's our purpose. And so we want to also, if we are offering programs, regardless of the type of library we're in, we want to make sure that all of our patrons who are attending those programs are having fun. And we're in the library. We are not teachers. We are not therapists. We are not counselors. And though we did try in our early days of trying to do this changeover, we had people come in from specialized organizations and clinics to try to train us, but we are not certified in those fields. That's not something that any amount of short trainings is going to change for us as a staff as a whole. We're just simply people who love books, and we want to share that love of reading and that the love of gaining knowledge with our patrons. And so that's what our focus should be on, and not trying to go into a niche that's not ours. And of course, that's what families and patrons come to the library for, including those with the special needs and any sensitivities that they may have. So let's talk about what this means for our public service. First and foremost, be aware of your surroundings. You may have a lot of natural light in your public space. So during the height of the day, you may not need your fluorescent lighting, because a lot of people are really, really turned off, whether they have a diagnosis of any kind or not. That fluorescent lighting is very harsh on some people's eyes. If you have enough natural light to accommodate the space, use your natural light until you need that fluorescent light, especially in your programming spaces. Be aware of things that others' reactions to, things, especially things that affect common sensitivities, loud noises, bright lights. If you know you're going to be having a program that's going to have loud noises or bright lights or anything, put up, signs. Hey, during this time, be aware we may have some bright lights, we may have some loud noises. This is the time that these will be occurring, and that way people can be aware of those things that they may react to or may trigger some sort of reaction to them. And be aware of your reactions, because sometimes when your patrons have a reaction or a response, you may react in a way that gives off some sort of negative response to them. So be aware of how you react also. Adjust the way that we approach our customer service. So a lot of people don't know how to contact or communicate rather with people who have some sort of sensitivity, especially if they have a speech issue or a communication issue. There's that, I guess, hesitation or nervousness or anxiousness about having to help someone in that situation. If you remain courteous, offer the resources you know are available. If you have any sort of resource that will improve their communication experience, use those resources. A lot of libraries do have things such as, paper and pen if they need to write it out. But some have the Kurzweil, or you may have an interpreter if they speak sign language. But use your things that are available to you within the resources in your system. Offer programs that kind of help to gain a knowledge of your patrons and foster that friendship and that openness, so that they know they're welcome. And of course, everything we do should be inclusive. We are rooted in courtesy because we're a public library. That's what we stand for, as customer service. So we're basically just diving deeper into that customer service and trying to make it better than it was before. Public service interactions with patrons, the number one thing that I can tell anyone at all is just treat them how you would want to be treated. That is probably the biggest thing. The first time I ever did this presentation, people's minds were just like, they were blown, because nobody thought about it. How would I want to be treated? And I personally have two children who both have multiple diagnoses. One of my children has quite a few diagnoses. And as a parent, I was like, how would I want someone to treat my children when we go into the library or when we go into another public space? And that was the very first thing that really hit home for me. And it's the reason why I started looking into ways that we could improve our public service and our offerings. Avoid stereotyping or guessing at what it is that they have going on with them. It may be something that's completely undiagnosed, or it may be something that's not significant enough to be chronic and to be diagnosed. Avoid oversimplifications. There may be some people who require it, that need it, that will request it, but don't oversimplify just because you have assumed something, and just plain be courteous. That's the number one thing I can recommend to anyone. That was a light bulb thing for me as a parent. I found that as courteous as I could be to patrons, it got me the best result in every sense. Whether I was dealing with a patron who was neurotypical or neurodiverse, or had some sort of sensitivity. So I started looking into this for several years back, and on a thing. Sorry, I apologize. My director just came in. So I had looked into this for several years, and in the years that I've been researching this, I tried to go to every session that I possibly could, not only to learn from my job, but also to learn from my own kids what I can do to improve their interactions in the public. So school age children, I began to refer to their reading levels rather than their grade levels. For older adults who were cognitively younger, I referred to their reading choices rather than their reading levels or their reading abilities. So there's word choices that you can make changes for. That was a huge one. That one really got a lot of positive reaction in my daily interactions with our patrons. Stay attentive to those reactions, how they use their words, how they use their body language. The clues are there. The clues are just like any other patron for the most part. They just may be a little more subtle. So you want to make sure that you pay attention to that. And it may be that they are just really frustrated with trying to get across what it is that they need. I have a nephew who he's on the spectrum, and he has a wonderful outlook on life. He's extremely happy kid. He is a voracious reader, but he has a hard time communicating and saying what it is that he needs or that he wants. And I'm sure everyone has probably come across patrons that they've interacted with over the years that have, they may even have multiple children who have some sort of neurodiverse situation, and whether it's diagnosed or not, those individual children in the same family are very different, and you have to approach them differently. I have one family that was just here this morning that fits that bill. We have the middle child is a young lady now. She's just out of high school, and she is on the spectrum, and she is very confident, and she comes in and she talks to the staff, and she tells you exactly what she wants. Whereas her younger brother is very, very shy. He doesn't always come with the family when they come to the library because he's not real comfortable in the public. But when he does come in, he sticks to his mom like glue. So you can have very huge differences within the same family, even, not just between individuals. There's a lot of misconceptions. So I'm going to let you read through those just really quickly, and then we're going to switch on over to the next slide, which is going to talk about where I think these are actually misconstrued. So, but over the years, I've really heard quite a few of these from the general public, some from other staff members that I've worked with over the years, and others from some of the patrons that I've interacted with or that I've overheard in the public. So first one is that they're not intelligent. I actually think that they are very intelligent. Most of them are even more intelligent than neurotypical people, but sometimes it's just not easy for them to articulate what their needs are. So we have to be a little bit more patient with them. And as I said earlier, if you see them in there, they want to be there. Okay. So even though it may be difficult for them, they want to be there. Some don't like to have contact. It's assumed that none of them do. But as in the case with my nephew, he loves hugs. He'll go up and hug a stranger. He doesn't care. But I have met both. So some do have aversion to touch and to interactions, close interactions, and others are perfectly normal with regard to that. And that doesn't necessarily apply only to those people with diagnoses. I've met a lot of neurotypical people who just are not huggers. They're not handshakers. They're not people who want to be within your bubble of space at all. And so I think that's a huge misconception about people in general, whether that be someone with a sensitivity or not. Not all people who are neurodiverse are going to have breakdowns from triggers. Some do. We recently had a young lady who was in a program it was actually an exercise program, and she was very interested in participating. but she kept having a trigger from the movement. But she kept getting up and she would get right back in and keep trying again because she wanted to be a part of the group. And it didn't bother her that these things kept happening. So as long as it doesn't bother the individual, it shouldn't bother the others around them, unless it, directly affects them. But it didn't in this case, thankfully. So breakdowns is something that doesn't happen as often as you would think. And then, of course, a lot of people think that people with sensory sensitivities are disruptive. Sorry about that. Such as people who maybe you might see individuals with headphones on, and maybe you might think that if there is a loud noise, maybe they may have some sort of triggered response. But typically, it just makes them feel more comfortable to have those on. And they're not hard to help. Yeah, if you adjust your perception of how you need to communicate with all of your patrons, whether they have a special situation or not, then it makes it just that much easier on you just from day to day dealing with the public in general. So additional concerns that I've come across is that obviously if they wanted to be treated differently or specific to their diagnosis, they wouldn't come to that public setting or that public program. They would go somewhere that was hosted specifically for their need. And then obviously, as I said earlier, anything that would be hosted for a specific diagnosis or specific sensitivity is technically against HIPAA because we are not supposed to ask them any sort of medical question. That is the law. So we want to definitely follow that. And that's probably what made our staff the most uncomfortable when we started looking at changing our programming for special needs and for sensitivities. We were really, really worried about the HIPAA issue. And then obviously the ages for sensitivities and different diagnoses vary greatly. And in our children's department, we have almost as many older, cognitively younger individuals as we have younger individuals who are coming into the library. And I know that in the adult services department, I've talked to a lot of people who even our cognitively younger adults go into that adult section because that's where they feel most comfortable because they're with the people that are their, chronological ages. So you're going to encounter people of all ages in the public. Now, how do we create that inclusion? There are many, many different ways that we can create it. We want to, number one, serve all of our patrons equally. We want to make sure that all of our resources are offered equally. And we want to make sure that our program options are something that will allow everyone to feel included. So first thing that we can do is we can increase what I tend to call simple supports. It's everyday materials that you can have available for use in your spaces. When I first implemented this in 2021, I didn't just buy these for my children's rooms. I bought these for our circulation desks. I bought them for the teen desks. I bought them for the reference desks. So they all have the opportunity to disperse these to the patrons as needed. Noise canceling headphones. Get actual noise canceling headphones. They're not as expensive as people would think. They're about $15 to $17 a pair on Amazon. They're really, really inexpensive. And for your sunglasses and fidgets and things of that nature, you can get promotional items if you have a budget for it. And that way, if they walk out, hey, there's your promotional item walking out the door with a patron. And then you just replace it with more. If it's not something that you can afford to have as a promotional item, then you might, guard it a little bit more closely, like your headphones. But but that's something that you can have. And that way you don't have to start turning lights off or turning sound off or anything of that nature. You can have these items available at every desk. And once your patrons realize you have these things, it makes them a lot more comfortable in your space and in your environment. And then we started doing sensory booklets. So we did start it, we tried it at COVID and it didn't work. So then we brought it back, and I'm going to show you an example later on of that sensory booklet for patrons. The one that I'm going to share is geared towards children, but obviously it can be tweaked to cater to all ages as well. And then your signage should be clearly written and simple. We talk about signage all the time in libraries. But one of the things that we don't discuss is whether or not your signage should have artwork. It should be pictures for some people that can't communicate well or need a more immediate response from a sign, or not a response, but an instruction. Flyers and handouts should also follow simple accessibility recommendations. I have a couple slides on that later as well. I actually used those accessibility features that we're going to talk about in this presentation. So you can look back through and see, what my choices are to keep things more accessible. One of the things that we did in our children's programming, and this was a huge, huge positive across the board with all of our patrons when we made these changes. So we started bringing our box of materials, the noise canceling headphones, the sunglasses, the fidgets. We started bringing them and having them available in every single programming room. So they're just sitting there. There's a little sign says, take them if you need them, use them if you need them, sort of a deal. But we don't make it obvious. We don't point it out. We don't, try to acknowledge it at every moment. It's just there and it's available if they need it. And then the multiple seating option. I didn't think that seating would be so important, but it truly is. There are some people that need to have their own little square so that they know this is my space and no one can get into my space. Some kids, though they're kids, don't want to be on the floor. They want to be in a chair. That's their comfort place. Some parents prefer to be on the floor so that they can be at their child's level. So even in our teen programs, giving them those options for other seating spaces or other seating types really goes a long way. So now we have, not only do we have the carpets and the carpet squares and the chairs, we also have seat cushions, we have floor cushions, we have bean bags, we have floor rockers. We have so many different types of seating now, and all of our patrons will just come into the program and they'll pick the one that's their favorite or their preferred type of seating, and they're happy. And it's been a huge positive effect on all of our programming. And they don't fight over the chairs. That was one of the big concerns for the staff. They're like, but they're going to fight over them. But if you give them enough options, then they may try them out, different ones at each program. Obviously, for adults, sometimes it's a little bit harder to give quite that many options. But even still, having a couple of different types of chairs might be an option for adults. I do have a company that I purchase most of our special seating from called Virco. That's where I get the floor rockers from. VIRCO is the company. They are on Louisiana state contract as well. And they have a series of seating called Room to Move. And so the chair that's pictured there is just a plain chair. But what they have is they have plain chairs, but underneath that seat is a mechanism that allows the seat to move around. So they can sit there and they can rock, or they can sway side to side or front and back, or they can go all the way around. And it's a way for your ADHD kids, your high energy sensitivities, even your adults who just can't sit still. They're not getting up and walking around, but they're still getting that movement sensation that they need. And they come in rockers, they come in standard seating, they come on rollers, they come with or without handles, arm handles. And so there's lots of different various seating that they provide that are just fantastic for people with sensitivities and accessibility needs. So I recommend them highly. And one of the other things that's really great for the multiple seating option is that those that need to have structure or personal space specific, they can go to that same chair that they need every time, or they can go to that one single square and they have, like I said, that personal space bubble, and it gives them that comfort of being in your space. So another thing that we started doing, and this is something that you can do in any program for any age, is we started using picture plans. So instead of just writing up an agenda, make it fun. Whatever you're planning to do in your program, make a picture plan on the wall so they know when you come in, hey, we're going to welcome you, we're going to introduce, we're going to tell you about what we're doing today, and then maybe we're going to read a book or we're going to do a particular activity. But use those pictures to show what you're going to be doing throughout the program. We have some people who have those anxieties about what they don't know. So if they walk into a room and they see a picture plan, they're like, oh, I know what we're going to be doing. And one of the things that one of my staff members brought up when I first introduced this idea, they were like, well, what if you get it out of order? And I said, well, let the child be the hero of the day. And you say, oh, I got it wrong. Oh, no, I got it out of order. Can you help me fix it? And then they went, they can come and help you get it in the right order. And you say, thank you so much. Can everybody give them a great hand? So make them the heroes for the day to help you put it back in the right order. If you have a craft or an activity and you have a sample of something, tack it up on the wall or put it on a table, put it somewhere where they can visibly look at it. If you can let them touch it, even better. And that way they know what it is that they're going to be doing. Some people need that visual cue in order to know if they're going to be able to do it, if they want to do it even. So it increases the ability for people who have a hearing or attention issue to participate more fully when you have a picture plan on the wall. So it's not just for those with anxieties, it's also for those with hearing or attention issues. And those children or adults who may have social cues that they miss, it might negate some of their anxieties that, oh, well, maybe I'm going to clap at the wrong time, or I'm going to stand up at the wrong time. And those that might be socially awkward might feel a little bit more invested in the program, So open participation. I know this is typically not considered a simple support, but for our purposes and children's, to me, this is a simple support. You want to open that participation to everyone, okay? And all it took was just for us to change our phrasing. Instead of saying, everyone stand up for our next song in a story time, we say, I'm going to stand up. If you would like to join us, you're welcome to. If you're not ready to join us now, you're welcome to join whenever you feel you're ready. And that way, those who are not sure if they want to do it can wait until they feel comfortable. And they know you're not going to single them out if they start halfway through the song or activity or whatever it is that you're doing. You can also announce reminders when you open up your program that it's okay. If you just want to watch, you're welcome to just watch. You can join in whenever you feel comfortable. If you need to step out, you are welcome to come back when you're done. Let them know it's okay to come in and out. If sometimes for some people, they need to hear that in order to know that it's okay for them to do that. So that's a huge thing for some people who have those little anxieties and those little worries, And it may seem like a very small thing to you, but that's a huge thing to them if you make them feel like it's okay, you know? It takes the pressure off the parent. It takes the pressure off the kids who understand enough to feel that way. It takes pressure off of any patron of any age. It helps them to not be overwhelmed. And it does encourage that participation that maybe they might not have wanted to do it at the beginning, and they're starting to feel a little comfortable and they're starting to feel the beat and they want to come join in the song. And so that encourages that late participation, and eventually by the end, everyone's having fun together. So no contact options. Make sure that whenever you're planning something, I know this is mostly kids, but every now and then there are things that happen for teens or adults where, you know, you're going to talk about, you know, either holding hands or, you know, high-fiving or whatever. Make sure that everyone knows that if they don't want to join or they don't feel comfortable, those no contact options are huge for people who have a physical proximity issue. Okay. It may be that they're shying away from it, or it may be that they have that true aversion or that true anxiety about it. And it will go ahead again, take that pressure off and make that opting out part of the activity instead of making them participate or making them feel like they have to participate. Because sometimes the wording we use makes everybody sound like they don't have a choice. Come on, we're going to get together in this circle today versus, all right, we're going to start a circle. If you would like to stand outside the circle and watch, you are welcome to do so. And then you can join in whenever you feel comfortable. So it might take a few more words, but it's not hard to do. Now, what does all this mean for our programming? In essence, you definitely have to be aware of all the materials and the activities that you offer. If you have an activity or a material that's going to be difficult for some to do, you might offer some other option. So in some cases for us with the children, we may have something that's really difficult to cut out, and we might have some people that have that dexterity issue, those motor skill issues, delayed motor skills. So we might have a few that are already pre-cut for them. And that way they can still participate in the craft, but they don't have to worry about fighting with the scissors. An activity, maybe you might have an activity that requires people to work together to complete some sort of a task. And you can make sure that if you have someone who has an aversion to the proximity of strangers, give them the option to do the activity with their caretaker or their adult or their parent. So there's different ways that you can approach different things that people might have issues about. Yeah. Be aware of the participants' triggers. So remember I talked about the signage earlier. If at the beginning of an activity or a program, you're going to have some sort of possible loud noise or whatever, talk about those triggers ahead of time. That way they'll be aware of it and they may be okay with it, or they might know, okay, this is something I won't be able to sit through. So make sure you give them that option ahead of time. If you don't tell them about it, then they won't know, you know. And then it can prevent issues during the program. Be aware of the skill set needed to accomplish the tasks in your program. So that's what I was talking about with the scissors. Make sure you know what skill set's going to be needed ahead of time and account for the possibility of changes. It doesn't take a whole lot of additional prep to do that, and it makes your program work so much more fluently and seamlessly with the interactions. Plan ahead for patrons' needs that are commonly present. If you know you have a patron who very frequently needs to have a space that's a little bit separated from the others, make sure you have that space that's available. so that they can sit a little bit apart from the others. If that's their comfort zone, let them be in their comfort zone. So if you know of something ahead of time, make sure you prepare for it. I know that it's a lot more easy to do if you have a registration list, but sometimes you can make those preparations even without that. And then, of course, as we said, I'll offer alternatives if you need to. Make adjustments to all of your procedures and your materials and your spaces, and to make more options for inclusions. So I'm going to give you a couple of ideas about that in a little bit. And then remove any items that might become a distraction or a detriment to your program. Maybe you might have an additional display of something in your room that can temporarily be taken down that might end up being something that's brought into the program and would cause a distraction. Whatever that is, we had something that was falling off the wall in one of our programs. The tape came apart. So I just took a few little extra minutes, tacked it all back up, because the previous time I'd had the program, somebody saw that it was coming off the wall and pulled it partially off the wall again. And so I went ahead and for that next time that I did it, I tacked it back up on the wall. It took me just a couple minutes to put a little extra tape, and then it wasn't a distraction for the next program. So make sure that you have fewer instructions for simplified things, or if it's something that's complex, make sure you have lots of instructions. Make sure you have picture instructions if it's possible. Some people are visual rather than verbal, so those picture instructions are fantastic. Depends on if you have an easy task or a difficult task. Consider posting those picture sequence cards that I talked about earlier. Some people try to just do verbal instructions. Maybe you might have a couple of sets of written instructions in case that's needed as well. And as we said earlier, don't tell, ask when you give instructions. Ask them to do something. Offer it to them as something that they can do, rather than saying that they need to do this. And let them decide if they want to participate or not. Create that atmosphere of acceptance. It's okay to join. It's okay to join when you're ready. And then the choice is always. So sensory times, if you do choose to do sensory times, we have some branches that offer the sensory time now in the entire branch rather than just the children's room. And then we have others that are only offering it within the children's room. So it depends on your space as to how you would want to do that. Those sensory times, we put signs up that say during this hour and this hour, we ask that you keep your volume to a minimum out of respect for those that may have a hearing sensitivity, and during this time, we're going to have lights turned down for those that may have a sensitivity to light. You just put little signs out so that people know why you're doing these things. And they might know somebody who needs to have that, and they might call them and say, hey, this branch has this every fourth Sunday of the month, or third Tuesday of the month. But each of our branches has a different day of the week and time of the day each month that they offer these sensory sensitivity times. And that way it offers the patrons in our parish different times and different locations that they can visit and experience a sort of sensory, less overload sensory time at our libraries to kind of, putter around and browse, or just come and read and just enjoy the environment. So if you turn out the unnecessary lights, if you're able, because some spaces aren't, obviously. Any sounds, if you have a clock that goes tick, 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 you might pause it for a while. Just anything that might take away or add to an overload of sensitivities. And then put those sensory materials, put those headphones and those fidgets and those sunglasses, put them out in the open, put them in an accessible spot where people can get immediate use of them. So one of the other things that was hugely popular for us is to have activities that are interactive, that are in-house, things they don't have to check out, things they don't have to ask for. Maybe some of them they do have to ask for. It just depends on what it is and where we've kept it. We have some things out on our floor in all departments. There's puzzles in the adult section. There's puzzles in the teen sections, at some places. There's coloring pages for all ages. Every single age loves to color. Okay. And it's cathartic for all of us to do that. It's very relaxing activity for many people. So have coloring pages out there, have coloring pencils or crayons or, whatever it is that's easiest for you to have out and accessible. And then we have board games that they can ask for in our children's rooms. We have little interactive Montessori games and things of that nature that they can come in and they can play with during their time while they're visiting us. So we have some kids that'll come and they'll be playing with an activity while their parent is reading them a book. And it just allows them to have a little bit more control over whether or not they want to be on a computer or color or play or whatever it is. We offer a lot of scavenger hunts, I Spy games, follow the clue things. So it's a lot of these little passive programs where they can just, oh, there's a trivia today. I can answer a question. Or here's a poll today. I like this versus that. Or a scavenger hunt. Maybe it's only in the children's room. Maybe it's in the entire branch. And they can take that little list and they can go find all the pictures. The scavenger hunt doesn't necessarily have to be a physical item. It can just be a printed picture of something that's been tacked on the wall somewhere or on the side of a space, shelf space. So there's lots of different things that you can do. We buy most of our in-house manipulatives and interactive toys from our local toy stores so that we can try to, help out the local stores. And they are gracious enough to give us a nice 20% discount on those things. So you might, contact some of your local toy stores or local game stores of some kind and see if you can work out some sort of a deal with them. So that's another option for you. So the sensory booklets. The reason we chose to go with a sensory booklet is because we know that there are a lot of people that have a fear of walking into a space that they don't know what they're going to encounter or where they need to go. And that's a real fear. It's a real fear for people, whether or not they have a sensitivity or a specific diagnosis. And so in order to allay those fears and those anxious feelings, sensory booklets are a huge help. And you can also create a video or slideshow from your sensory booklet and post that on your website. So some people would access it digitally rather than picking up a booklet. And I'll show you an example of our booklet really quickly so that you can see it. So this is our booklet. Can everybody see that? Yes. Yeah. Okay. So this is our the one for our main library, and it has, let's see, let's go to, so it has a very simple message for our kids, for the little kids, and then it has very little bit more information for the parent. So they know what the outside of the branch looks like. They know what the entrance looks like. When they come in, here are some rules, basic, simple rules. This is where they're going to return their books. They know what it looks like. They know where to go. What does the entrance to the children's room look like, and how do I find it? That kind of thing. And then what kind of things, what does the service desk look like? Where's the bathroom? Where's the water fountain? They need to know these things before they walk in the building sometimes. And so we just used our little animals to supplement instead of using children or parents. And during COVID, when we were trying to do this during COVID, we had masks on all of them, and it was a pain. So we scrapped it all and started over. We were like, no, this is not going to work. But we gave them an idea of the different types of interactions and things that they can do while they're here. And this way it sort of opens up that interest, so they know when they come in, these are things they can ask for, these are things they can do, here's the places where they can go. And then of course we said we had fun at the library, thank you for visiting, and we hope to see you again, at the end. And then obviously these things can be used for your older patrons. You can make them more generic and more for different ages. So the sensory booklet is a huge thing. We do not have ours up on the website, but we just finished in December getting our new website up and running, and we are still working on trying to get it updated. So that's why it hasn't made it there yet, but I hope it's going to be there soon. I really do. But what we are going to do is each of our branches is going to have the same exact booklet, but the pictures will change so that they see the difference that it looks like at each branch. So sensory exploration is huge for people with sensitivities. It may not be that they want to explore every sense. So maybe some things are things that they're like, oh, I don't know that I can touch that shaving cream, but I really want to put my fingers in that paint, So it depends on what it is that their own personal, what is it that they feel that sensory is pulling them to. And so you can have bean bags, and you can have the different balls with the different textures, and there's so many different things that you can purchase that have sensory connotations, and they have them for all ages. They have sensory things for so many different ages. Obviously, all of my pictures are going to be for kids because that's where I'm at. I'm in the children's room, but please know that everything can be tweaked for your ages. Obviously, that we talked about the different textiles with the furniture, the different options with the furniture. There's also different seating textiles with your furniture, so take that into consideration too when you're replacing your furniture. Add elements into your regular programming. You can always add something extra into any program that can offer some sort of sensory-based experience. And adults love crafts just as much as kids. I know that's a misconception too. There's a lot of people that are like, oh, adults don't want to do that. We have had many adults beg to come and do our children's and our teens' crafts because they want to do crafts as well. So again, non-judgmental environment. We're all kids at heart. And so offer those low judgment, open-ended programs. Make sure that you have the multiple skills or multiple developmental levels present in your materials, so that they can work at their own pace. That's the whole reason to have that, is so that they can work at their own pace. And they can choose, if you offer them different choices. So we're going to talk about open house and centers approach programming. And that is a huge way to offer them a choice and a comfort level in programming. So it also allows staff members to be a little bit more free to mingle and help where help is needed, rather than just staying at the front of the program and just saying, here's the instructions, and it can decrease a lot of those sensory issues by doing that. So this is the open house programming. Open house programming is basically, I'm going to have a program from this time to this time. So it might be 2 hours, it might be 3 hours, it might be all day. But you're going to put those materials out, and during the day, people can come by and they can participate at the time that they come by. So let's say I'm going to do something from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. This is an example of one of our programs that was a make and take, so the kids could come and do it at any time during that time. But you can also do things if you have a low foot traffic area or branch, then you can actually offer a full-blown program where if you're slow enough, hey, would you like to hear a story and do a craft? Or for adults, would you like to color something and make a craft? You know, you can stop them and say, hey, would you like to do this? I have this available. Let me offer it to you. And then so you just have the materials out. You can still cover your desk and then just offer it as it's needed. It's great, like I said, for locations with low foot traffic, and the longer time offering means that you're more likely to have a higher participation, which is an increase in stats. And, you know, we all like an increase in statistics. So in participation. One of the advantages is a lot of patrons, lower cognitive age adults, children have a need to work on those skills. They have to gain the confidence, first of all, because a lot of them are hesitant to participate because of they are, especially those lower cognitive adults, they're aware of their limitations. So a lot of times they will have hesitation in participating. You know, so they need to increase their fine and gross motor skills. They have those sensory sensitivities. Maybe they have a speech issue, maybe phonetic and phonological skills or something that they're still working on. But all these different things are things that sensory exploration will help them with. And of course, it also helps to increase their enjoyment of coming into the library and experiencing our environment. And then they will stay and hopefully increase their reading skills as well. So all of these things that you explore with sensory exploration also have a correlation through literacy related skills, so that whether they have some sort of a sensory sensitivity, a diagnosis, or they're completely 100% neurotypical, then, you know, they'll still get help. They'll still benefit from sensory exploration. You know, I can remember a few years back when my kids were going through different therapies, and I would watch the things that they would do, and I was like, is there a spot for adults to do that? Because I would really like to do that too. So it's something that's exploration is fun for adults too. So let's just put it that way. So patrons with sensory sensitivities a lot of times would benefit from having a choice. It might be that they're not comfortable doing this thing over here, you know, choice A, but choice B is right up their alley. It gives them control over their environment so that they can stay in that comfort zone. Those with shorter attention spans and are easily distracted know that they're not going to be judged for losing interest quickly or for wanting to stop in the middle of a craft or a program. They know that they'll still be accepted and it's still okay to do that. So, because some just won't participate if they don't feel that that's okay for them to have that feeling. So open-ended and center-based programming have actually been very positive in our system. We actually have a couple of branches that love to do the centers approach, and they do it often because whether it doesn't matter what age group they're working with or what it is they're offering, by doing the centers approach, it makes them more free to help those that might need the physical help. It helps the kids who maybe it takes them the whole hour to do this one craft. And so they're going to pick the one that they're best at and that they want to go do. And then it allows the others that are like super fast at it to go and do all the different things that are all at all the different centers during the hour that it's offered. So it's that comfort and that open, easy, easy access that helps them get through it. So the center's approach, what that means is you're going to choose 3 or more activities. I don't recommend going past 5 unless you have a couple hours in a really large space. And so we typically do add something that's literacy based for the kids in our mix, but you choose 3 or more activities. And at the start of the program, you're going to describe each one to the participants, remind them how long the program's going to run and how long they'll have access to it. Let them know you're going to give them a 5 to 10 minute warning to let them know when the program is almost over. Let them know about any special instructions ahead of time and where they can find written or picture instructions located for each of the different activities, if that's applicable. And then, of course, since you aren't, if you aren't required to run one of the center activities, you know, like I said, they can circulate and all during the time to help those that need the help. We have actually created several sensory kits and programming kits that are useful for this type of programming approach. And I'm going to share a few of those with you now. Hold on a second. Let me pull that up. So this is one of our messy story time choices. So you pick 3 to 4 of them. And this one is specifically birth to first grade. And we've made a slime kit that the kids can, the staff actually can check out the slime kit. It gives them about 3 different recipes to make different types of slime, depending on the age group that they're working with. The Play-Doh and Cloud Dough table is, again, we have different recipes available. So you can have some that are gluten-free. You have others that might be milk-free. So whatever it is that we're using. And then we also have a baby messy kit that we created. And that baby messy kit is probably the thing that gets checked out the most. And the parents enjoy it as much as the babies do because everything is edible. They can stick it in their mouth and they're not going to get sick. And some of it's paint, some of it's Play-Doh, some of it's puffy, just like cloud dough type stuff. And so it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to do that with the kids. And of course, always, if you're going to have something messy, you got to have that cleanup station with towels, wet wipes, aprons, giant t-shirts, whatever it is that you've got that you can provide for them. And you might also want to make sure your description says, come dressed for a mess. So, and that's for any age when you're going to have a messy thing. But in your handout, I do have these messy storytime ideas. I did send this to Ariana. So if you're interested in seeing the different types of hands-on kits and centers ideas that we have, all of this that I'm going through right now is in those slides that I sent to her. So you can look at those a little bit more in depth, but I did put those together for you so that you could kind of see how we do it. If you see any kits that you're interested in, the full list of what we have in those kits, you're welcome to shoot me an email and I will be more than happy to provide you with a list of what we've got in those kits. But we have kits for sensory exploration, and we have kits for messy exploration. We have kits for tactile exploration, things of that nature. And we've offered them to all the different age groups, because even if you're having an adult program, you may need to have something for the kids to do on the back side of the room so that they're occupied while their parent is attending a program or something of that nature. So, all right, so let me close that. Close those tabs so I can get back to, there we go. All right. So again, let them know when it's approaching the end of the program. And then the open house, I kind of went over this already. I started this when I was in my first librarian position, and essentially I was at a branch that during the course of the day, I might see 3 or 4 kids during the week, each day. And then on the weekends, I might see 7 to 8. And they were always on foot. They weren't with their adult. They would just wander in and wander out from the neighborhood. And so I started to think, how can I change to offer a program that would be accessible to all of them? And so I started this as a way to get more statistics and to get all of my kids to realize that, yes, I have things to do when they come to the library. But as I started looking at accessibility and inclusion, I was like, okay, how can I make this a little bit more flexible so that others can use it as well? And I basically just changed my materials. I changed the way that I approached the patrons and asked them if they wanted to participate. I made sure that every time I advertise it, it says while supplies last. Because if you don't do that, and then you got somebody that comes up in that last 10 minutes and you don't have one, and they're going to have a meltdown. At least in the kids, they do. But I imagine some of the adults might do the same thing. But, you know, I've run programs, like I said, for a particular time range, certain amount of hours. But I've also done some of these that lasted for days. So that sporadic participation from your patronage, just whatever works for your branch and your location is how it goes. It can be as flexible or as rigid as you need it to be. And that's why it's considered just an open house program. Do you need a sensory room? My personal opinion is that depends on your branch and your demographic and your patronage, because I think it's personal preference. It's opinion. And I've talked to a branch, a neighboring system that called me and they said, hey, we're creating a sensory space and I wanted to talk to you about what we need to have in it. And so they were talking about like furniture and stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, do you have a list of rules? Do you have activities? What are your limitations on time and usage? And they hadn't thought about all those things. So if you are going to include a sensory room in your space, it's a wonderful idea. I've actually seen them in locations where they have worked beautifully. But you need to make sure that if you have that quiet space, that sensory room, number one, it's not a study room. It is a sensory room. You might be able to use it for your therapist to meet with their clients, or you might be able to use it for your families that just need to get away. But it's not used for parents who want to go into a room so they don't have to watch their kids. You know, it's not used for people who want a quiet study room. That's not what its use is. So it needs to be very clear and precise what the usages, the approved usages are. You need to consider the different types of seating, the different types of flooring, even the different types of wall coverings. So like if you have wallpaper, there's different textures of wallpaper that could be included in there to have some sort of sensory input. What contents to leave in the room? Are you going to leave activities? Are you going to leave books? What are you going to leave in there? Is there going to be a table or is it just going to be seating? Are you going to, you know, you need to make sure that whenever it's in use, everyone understands what its use is. And then you also need to decide, are you going to have it completely open access or are you going to keep it locked so that someone has to ask to use it? If you don't keep it locked, How are you going to police those that might use it for the wrong reasons? How accessible is it from the open public? So all of these things need to go into consideration when you have a sensory room. It seems like it might be a lot, but it's going to make the usage by the people who need it a lot more pleasant if you work all these things out ahead of time. Now, how do you market it? How do you tell your public that you have all these things now, or that you're going to offer these things? Well, word of mouth from the staff and the patrons is number one. We always get the most positive feedback from word of mouth. But some of the things that you can do is just your staff approaches. As people notice, they're going to give that word of mouth. You know, you're going to say, hey, I had a wonderful experience over at such and such branch. The staff was so helpful and welcoming. You know, my child or my client had all these things happen, and they might describe them. You can, as your signage changes from just words and, you know, arrows and things to pictures and things that are instant cues, they're going to pick up on that and they're going to spread that around. Obviously, if you have a newsletter, that's fantastic. Put an ad in your newsletter, put an article in your newsletter, share with them what your thoughts are for the public, and invite feedback. Invite your public to come and tell you, we love that you're doing this. We would love to see this too. That's how you can improve what you are already doing. The best way to do it is to ask the people who are using it and ask the people who need it. So your monthly calendars, your online calendars, your flyers, anything that goes out to your public organizations that you work with, make sure that you contact your local organizations that work with autistic, ADHD, maybe put some flyers out at the therapy offices, the church offices, those kinds of things, and make sure that everyone is getting that information. If you have a schedule of when your special programming is going to happen, you don't necessarily have, like I said, you don't have to have specifically worded programs that are for a diagnosis. But if you know that these programs are going to be specifically inclusive and you've made arrangements, you can put those into some sort of a flyer and distribute those separately from your regular flyers. Your sensory changes, your booklets, your virtual tours, if you turn your booklet into a virtual tour, your sensory days, all of these things need to be promoted through flyers, online. Contact, you know, we right here in town, we have Baton Rouge Parents Magazine. We also have Red Stick Moms. A lot of these mom groups will have their own sites that they go to regularly to find out what's going on in the city. And then of course there's also lots of different promotional sites for people visiting your area or people who are either adults or teens that want to know what's going on in the area. Share it with all of them so that they know that you're making these changes and upgrades and that you would like to get, you know, some more participation. So here's again the sensory booklet. I do want to back up one more thing real quick. So you see the note to parents. We did a note to parents so that they would know what our purpose for the booklet is. And you can also just do a note to patrons for the same idea. A lot of our caregivers of our older adults that come in really appreciate that. So you can put whatever, you know, note you want to give to them in that on that page. So let's talk about some of the accessibility things that you can do with your flyers and your presentations. I've seen a lot of people do flyers where they have yellow font or bright yellow backgrounds. Yellow is a wonderful color, but it's really bad for the eyes. So if you have yellow on top of white, a lot of times that's going to be really, really harsh on people's eyes. Yellow font is extremely hard to read. Small fonts are really hard to read for a lot of people. Even people who do not have sensitivities, they may just have bad eyes. I mean, I'm getting to the point where these aren't helping anymore. I might have to go get a new prescription, and I have to do like this to use my readers to read stuff. So it's anyone, anywhere might have trouble reading your flyer. And you want things to be short and concise, but you want them to be large enough that they don't have to stop what they're doing just to see something that's supposed to catch their eye. So anything that needs to be on a flyer should be no less than 10 point. And I really don't think 10 point is even large enough. I always tell my staff that when they make their flyers, 12 is the absolute minimum I will accept. But unless it's a header, don't go over 16 points, because then it looks like you're yelling at them. So, and I actually didn't get these instructions. I didn't make these up myself. I got these from a session that I went to. So this is something that came from someone who works with people with accessibility issues. That's where that came from. I did not catch her name, so if she's watching, I apologize. But there are font styles that they recommend, specifically the sans serif and the serif. These are some of the ones that were specifically listed in the presentation as being good ones to use. This presentation that you're watching right now is actually done in Verdana, and it is done in the 16-point font. So, so that way you can kind of see the difference between how it's done. Well, I'm sorry, this one is done in the 18-point font because it's a presentation. But whenever I print out my flyers now, I use the 16-point font. And then we talked about colors a lot. Contrast is a huge thing. If you're going to be using a darker color, make sure you have your font contrasted appropriately light, because we have a lot of people that will use a black font writing on top of like a blue or a red, and sometimes those are really hard to read. You also might want to make sure that you stand back from your colors and your flyers and make sure that it's still legible, because a lot of times people will saturate it with color or saturate it with busyness, and then the words disappear. All of those things, it's not just an aesthetic or a prettiness or an organized point for your flyers and your presentations. It's also, the main thing is that, can the people who you need to access with this information, can they even read it? Because if you can't read it, guess what? They can't either. So, and you might want someone who doesn't know what it says to look at it for you, because you know what it says, therefore you're going to pick it up really quickly. But if you give it to a third party and they're still having trouble reading it, you know you need to make adjustments. Backgrounds of your presentations. So white backgrounds are great for a lot of things. But when you're doing, especially when you're doing something on a digital screen, white backgrounds can be very hard on the eyes. So you always want to put a simple color, a light color behind it, if you're not going to do a whole lot of fancy stuff to it, because that way it helps to offset the eyes, offset the background for the eyes, to be a little bit, oh, I lost an O there on photo. Sorry about that. But it makes it a little bit easier to read it. It makes it more legible on screen. And then even when you put it in print, it's a little bit more legible for the eyes. So those are just some simple accessibility recommendations for flyers and presentations, for trying to reach more people who may have those accessibility problems and issues. So I managed to keep it with 5 minutes to spare, my presentation. But if anybody has any questions, that's what I've got for you today.
We've got one question.
Okay.
And that is, where did you purchase the branded fidgets? Brandy was wondering about that.
The branded fidgets. So our fidgets, I go to, we have a local company here called Vivid Imprints. So they did a lot of our stuff. I know that there's several all around. 4imprint is one of my favorites. Also, Janway. Those are great companies. And sometimes I'll go to all of them because I'll be looking for certain things, and I have to go to all three to find out what it is that I'm looking for. But almost every single one of my children's promotionals doubles as a fidget in some way, shape, or form. And I tell you what, ever since I've been doing that, I can't keep my promotionals. They just fly. Every single outreach or event that I go to, they're all over. So I frequently have to reorder. Frequently have to reorder.
Problems you want to have, right?
Yes, problems you want to have, right?
That looks like it was the only question that we had.
Okay.
So just a reminder that we'll drop our links in the chat for our link tree. There is also a link in there for our feedback form. Please fill out our feedback forms. We really want to make sure that we're responding to people's needs and that we know what that we know how they feel about what we're doing as an organization and that we are meeting their needs in that way. If you would like to rewatch today's presentations, they'll be posted on our YouTube channel. I believe everything may already be uploaded to our website at nolailc.org. You can check it out there. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to email us at nolailc@gmail.com. We hope that we'll see everyone next year. Thank you for being with us today, as that's all the time that we have. So take care, everyone, and stay healthy and safe. And thanks again for being here for us. We appreciate y'all attending. Oh, and thanks to our presenters as well. Thanks for everybody that presented today and this week. It was great. I really enjoyed everything. So thanks again.